She was just 12, no money, no fame, just a heart full of kindness. But what she did for a millionaire that the whole town had forgotten changed everything. This isn't just a story about a girl and a grave. It's about how one selfless act can echo far beyond life and death, and by the end, you'll believe that even the smallest light can wake a sleeping soul. Every day after school, Maya took a different path home, not because it was quicker, but because it passed by the quiet, forgotten cemetery on the edge of town. It wasn't the kind of place most 12-year-olds would wander into alone, but Maya wasn't like most kids. She found peace among the stillness, the names carved in stone, and the stories she imagined for each one. One grave in particular always pulled her in. It wasn't the fanciest or the oldest, but it was the loneliest. The stone read, James Rowan, 1945 to 2020, a life lived in silence. No flowers, no footprints, no signs that anyone had been there in years. People in town spoke about him in hushed tones. He was rich, but strange, they'd say. Kept to himself, died alone, no family, no friends. That didn't sit right with Maya. She didn't care about the money or the rumors. Something about that name, that phrase, a life lived in silence, made her chest ache. She imagined what it must have felt like to leave the world with no one to remember you. So she started talking to him. At first, it was just a whisper as she passed by. Hi, Mr. Rowan. Then it became longer visits. She'd sit cross-legged beside the grave, take out a library book from her backpack, and read aloud. Sometimes she brought wildflowers, sometimes cookies she'd baked with her dad. She told him about her school projects, how nervous she was for the spelling bee, how much she missed her mum. She laughed when she imagined what he must think of her chatter. But still, she came. I don't think anyone deserves to be forgotten, she said one cloudy afternoon, placing a daisy next to his headstone. The wind was soft that day, as if listening. The cemetery caretaker noticed her one afternoon, a puzzled look on his face. You knew him? He asked odd. Maya shook her head. No, but maybe he needed a friend. The old man said nothing, but from that day on, he made sure the path to James Rowan's grave was always cleared. Maya didn't know it yet. Her small, simple visits were about to uncover something far bigger than she could ever imagine. The next day, Maya and her father went straight to the town's small local bank. The envelope carefully tucked into her backpack, still wrapped in the plastic that had protected it for years. Her father was skeptical at first, unsure if any of it was real. But when the bank manager read the letter, he grew still. The signature matched the documents on file. The key matched an old unclaimed safety deposit box untouched since James Rowan's death 5 years ago. In a quiet room in the back of the bank, the manager turned the key and slowly pulled open the long steel drawer. Inside was a thick leather folder, a dusty journal, and a small wooden box. The folder contained documents, savings, bonds, stock certificates, land deeds. Maya's father stared in disbelief. The total value was more than $3 million. The journal, written in the same careful handwriting as the letter, told the story of a man who had watched the world from behind closed doors. James had once loved deeply, lost tragically, and never recovered. His wealth had grown quietly, untouched. But his heart, he admitted, had shrunk under the weight of silence. And then came the final page. It held instructions. Create a foundation, not in my name but in the name of kindness. Use this money to help those who feel unseen, unheard, forgotten. And if a child found this, then the world still has hope. Maya's eyes welled up. He was waiting for someone he didn't want to be invisible. He just didn't know how to be seen. Her father didn't speak for a moment. Then he placed a hand gently on her shoulder, and somehow, you saw him. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about connection. About a girl who looked past what the world ignored and chose to care. The wealth James left behind became more than numbers, and a vault. It became the seed of something alive. Something lasting. A legacy, not of fortune, but of faith in kindness. And Maya, just 12 years old, was now its keeper. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Maya had gone to the cemetery despite the gray clouds overhead. She didn't care about the weather. James Rowan had become part of her daily life, like a quiet friend who always listened. The ground was soft from the rain as she knelt beside the grave, determined to plant a few bright tulips she had picked up with her pocket money. As she dug carefully with her small trowel, the tool struck something hard. It wasn't a rock. Curious, she cleared away the dirt and discovered the corner of an old, rusted metal tin, half buried beneath the soil, just in front of the headstone. Her heart pounded as she pulled it out and opened the creaky lid. Inside was a sealed envelope, wrapped in a plastic bag. The paper was yellowed and fragile, but the ink was still clear. Written in neat handwriting were the words, "To whoever still believes I matter." Her hands trembled as she opened the letter that it was from James. In the letter, he poured out his heart in a way no one had ever heard before. He wrote about his life, how he had made his fortune young, but never found the courage to trust anyone. How he kept his distance from people, always afraid they only saw his money, not his soul. He admitted his biggest regret was not letting anyone in. But what struck Maya most was what came next. He had buried this letter, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone kind enough would find it. Enclosed was a small safe deposit box, key, and instructions. He wrote, "If someone finds this, it means the world still has kindness. I want you to use what you find, not for yourself, but to remind the world that even forgotten people matter." Maya stared at the paper, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at the grave and whispered, "You were never really invisible. You just needed someone to see you." She clutched the letter close and ran home through the rain, mud on her shoes and a key in her pocket. What started as a simple act of kindness was quickly turning into a secret legacy, and she was the one meant to carry it forward. 1 year later, the town that once forgot James Rowan gathered in the school auditorium, this time, not to whisper rumors, but to celebrate something beautiful. The stage was decorated with soft lights, fresh flowers, and a large banner that read, "The James and Maya Human Kindness Foundation, where every soul matters." Maya stood near the podium, nervously, holding her speech in trembling hands. She wore a simple dress, her hair pinned back with the same daisy clip she used to leave at James's grave. In the front row sat her father, wiping his eyes. Next to him, the bank manager, the cemetery caretaker, teachers, families, even kids from her school who once thought cemeteries were scary, now looked up to her like she was a hero. She spoke clearly, her voice small but full of purpose. "When I first found Mr. Rowan's grave, I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was someone nobody visited. And I thought, maybe if someone showed up, even once, maybe he wouldn't feel so forgotten." The room was silent, hanging on every word. People say, "I helped change his story." But the truth is, he changed mine. He reminded me that even quiet lives matter. Even people who seem invisible have hearts, regrets, and hope. I didn't do anything big. I just showed up. I listened. I cared. And sometimes, that's enough. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. The foundation, funded by James's estate, had already begun awarding scholarships to underprivileged kids, supporting elderly care programs, and planting memory gardens in forgotten spaces. Each act was simple but powerful. A ripple started by a little girl and a man the world had overlooked. Later that evening, Maya walked back to the cemetery. The grave was no longer plain. A polished bench sat beside it now, inscribed with the words, "One child's kindness changed a forgotten life." And the world felt it. She sat there quietly, the wind tugging at her dress. "I hope you see this, Mr. Rowan," she whispered. "I told you you wouldn't be forgotten." In the hush of the fading day, it felt like he did, because Maya had done more than honor the dead. She had brought a silent life back into the heart of the living. The sun dipped low behind the trees as Maya sat quietly beside the grave that had once been forgotten. The marble was smooth now, clean and surrounded by blooming flowers of every color. The bench beside it, where she often sat and read aloud, bore the words she had come to live by. One child's kindness changed a forgotten life, and the world felt it. Birdsong filled the air. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed, and a breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and daisies. Maya closed her eyes and smiled. What had started as a simple after-school visit had become something much greater than she ever imagined. People from all over the state had written letters to the foundation, families who received help during hard times, students who got scholarships, lonely elders who now had someone visiting them weekly, strangers, moved by the story of the girl who saw the unseen, had donated, volunteered, and shared their own acts of kindness in James Rowan's name. And through it all, Maya had remained the same girl, gentle, curious, and quietly determined to make people feel that they mattered. As she stood to leave, she placed one last daisy on the grave and whispered, "You gave me a purpose, Mr. Rowan. You gave the world a reason to believe again." She turned and began to walk home, her backpack a little heavier from the books she carried, but her heart lighter than it had ever been. A boy passing by with his mother pointed at her and said, "That's her, right? The girl who brought the millionaire back to life." His mother nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, that's Maya." She didn't stop to listen, but her smile said she heard, because sometimes the smallest acts plant the deepest roots. And sometimes, it takes just one child to remind the world that no one, no matter how buried, how silent, How forgotten is ever beyond the reach of kindness. She was just 12, but she changed everything.